purpose of this is for you to be able to name simple ionic formulas. This is something like NaCl. Ionic means held together by the opposite charges of like a positive and negative. And you're going to need to know your Roman numerals, and they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. There they are. I love Roman numerals. Now, the rules for naming is that the positive ion comes first, and in most cases, you're just going to state it. You're going to state if it's a metal, you're going to state its name. So for an example, like FeCl3, that's the formula, the name would begin with iron. And in this formula, the positive ion is the Ca, and so it would just be calcium. Now, the second rule is for transition metals, the ones right here in the middle, all right, of a periodic table. And the rule is that you need to use Roman numerals to specify their charge. Now, in this scenario, iron has a 3, positive 3 charge, because chlorine always has -1, and there's 3 of them. So the name would be iron 3, and you'd put the 3 in parentheses. Calcium is not a transition metal, so you don't need parentheses, so that just stays calcium. Now, the third rule has to do with polyatomic ions, and those names don't change. So this would be calcium hydroxide. That's the name completely. Now, the fourth rule has to do with single elements like chlorine and fluorine and iodine and oxygen. What you do is you affix their name with the suffix "ide." So chlorine becomes chloride. So this would be iron 3 chloride, and that's the whole name. Now, let's go over the example of NaCl. NaCl, now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for these things. They're on the periodic table. And this is mainly for figuring out whether the metal is a transition metal, and sodium is not. So I don't need to worry about Roman numerals. And chlorine is a single element, so I'm going to use the suffix "ide" at its end, like I did with the iron example. So it would be sodium chloride. Now this is the chemical name. Sodium chloride is a really common chemical, so it's sometimes people go by its common name, and that's salt. Now here's another example: magnesium, or Fe(MgF2), and I almost said the name. You look for if it's a transition metal. Magnesium is not, so I don't need parentheses. Fluorine is a single element, so I need to use the word "ide." That's my cat in the background. So the name of this would be magnesium fluoride. Here's another one. Now this one's a little different because it has a polyatomic ion. Lithium is not a transition metal, and I need to recognize that Cn is polyatomic. So I would use the name for it, and it's lithium cyanide would be its name. Now, iron is a transition metal, so I'm going to need to use Roman numerals. OH has a -1 charge, right? And there's 3 of them. So -1 times 3 is -3, so Fe has to be +3. So this would be iron 3 hydroxide. Now, cobalt is a transition metal. Chlorine's a -1, so that's a -4 total, so that means cobalt has a +4 charge. So the name would be cobalt 4 chloride. Now, copper, transition metal, need a Roman numeral. I go by the anion. So SO4 is -2. So the anion, the cation has to be +2. So it'd be copper 2 sulfate. Now, the last one is this. Silver is transition metal, so I'm going to need a Roman numeral. Nitrate is -1, all right? And therefore, I'm going to need a +1 to neutralize, so it'd be silver 1 nitrate.